we got it?
I'm sorry, yeah, I can't use a camera. Just can't figure it out.
Sorry, I'm recording this because I want to be able to watch myself later, kind of interact that way. As a thespian myself, I like to critique myself, so just for now. All right. So, hi folks, my name is Katrina Desrick. Here to present Home, There, and Back Again. Essentially, it's the location and prediction of celestial bodies. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, unless you're a nerd like me, probably not a whole lot, because I'm one of those that just looks outside and says, oh, well, what's that? Why is it that like that? Now, if you look at this picture right here, you might be sitting there thinking, like, what is that? Is it a speck of food on a carpet? Is it just a little piece of dust that just happens to be floating around somewhere? Or maybe it's just a little blurb on just a piece of film. If you've seen this picture before, please forgive me, but unless you're a complete nerd like I am, you probably don't know what it is. In which case, it's referred to as the pale blue dot. Next slide, please. In which case, this was actually expounded on by Dr. Carl Sagan, who is by far one of my favorite astrophysicists that has ever lived. In which case, he said, look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, every hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader. Every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in the vast cosmic arena. Now, I'll just give you guys a little bit of credibility here. I'm getting my sources from 3 different men of science, essentially. First being Professor Mark Lane, who is the astronomy professor here at Palomar, and in which case you guys can see their credentials here. You've got, also I referred to Dr. Carl Sagan, who unfortunately no longer is living, but he's actually more and more famous / infamous astrophysicist, cosmologist, astronomer, and basically science communicator. If any of you guys actually remember the original show, The Cosmos, that it used to play, in the early 90s, were actually a repeat of, or actually reruns rather, of the actual show back in the 70s. In which case, I'm also going to be referring to Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's currently living and actually revamped the show, who did the current Cosmos that just played actually a couple months ago. Next one, please. So, I will be the first one to tell you that as a kid, my parents dragged me absolutely everywhere. They took me to San Francisco, the Grand Canyon, absolutely everywhere, and I would just sit there and like, this is a drag. What am I doing? I'm not getting anything out of this. Until I found myself at the bottom of the Grand Canyon with my dad, in which case he knew that I was bored. He absolutely knew what actually made me irritable. That was hiking, to be honest with you. Not a big hiker these days. But in which case he said, you know what, Katrina, just look up. Because he was just kind of fed up with my attitude. And then when I actually did look up, what I saw absolutely blew me away. I saw more stars there in my entire life. And you just saw clusters of stars, you saw planets, you saw just anything and everything that you can imagine in the middle of the Grand Canyon. Just like that, just by looking up. In which case, this is basically how this all started. Now, I really wish I could say I was the first one to actually do this. Actually be like, oh, hey, cool, there's the sky and stars and stuff, but I'm not. It actually started off with several people, and actually pretty much just on the time, everyone just kind of looked up and figured out, well, what's up there? Why is it like that? Now, as a quick question for you guys that are maybe history buffs and things like that, who came up with the telescope? No, actually.
I was going to say, I don't think that's right.
No, that's a common misinformation, actually. It was Hans Lippershey in 1608. Galileo Galilei actually expounded on that about 3 years later. But because Galileo was a little bit more well-renowned, he was like, oh, that's mine. It's my creation, no big deal. In which case, because of the telescope and because of how we've actually developed it, we were able to figure out, well, how far is everything? Where is everything in this universe? Next slide, please. In which case, we have a couple of different ways we figure out where celestial bodies are. These are kind of a little bit backwards, but bear with me here. The first one being triangulation. Now, triangulation, according to the almighty Wikipedia, is defined as the process of determining the location of a point by measuring the angles to it from known points to either end of a fixed baseline, rather than measuring the distances to the point directly. So in other words, well, we know where that is, so we should be able to know where that is, and figure it out from there. In which case, we actually know where our sun is. It's actually approximately 186 million miles away from here. And because we know where that is, we can figure out where pretty much anything in our closer galaxies is. And we also have the very, very basic way of actually calculating where something might be also. Think for a second, maybe you've got a really annoying neighbor, and there's a light flashing into your bedroom window. You can figure by how bright it is that maybe you're standing in their garage or something, just shining it into your window on purpose. As opposed to maybe if they were just on top of their roof looking at something, you can see that it's a little bit dimmer. Same rule applies. That one's called the brightness measurement. In which case, you'll be able to kind of determine, well, since the sun is this bright, it must be this close, so if that star over there is super dim, we're going to assume that it's pretty far off. Now, with that being said, that's kind of the more technical part of it. Not everybody's into that. I'm kind of one of those people. I love physics, so it kind of makes sense. Next slide, please. In which case, discovery. Discovery comes in a lot of play in here, as opposed to, oh, okay, let's just do some calculations and maybe figure out where things are. Discovery has a lot to do with that, in which I asked Professor Lane, in kind of my ignorance, I was like, how do you predict where all this stuff is? Said, well, and you should have seen the expression on his face. He's just kind of like, that's not how any of this works, kind of thing. And he goes, astronomers don't necessarily hunt them down. It's simply looking and wondering. Also, some scientists are not so altruistic as they have something they're trying to understand from the nature of what they're looking for. So basically, they're kind of like, well, if we have life like this over here, maybe there might be something over in that general vicinity, and they just kind of explore that general direction. In which case, because of who we are and what we are on this planet, you often have to wonder, where do we fit in all of this? In which case, Neil deGrasse Tyson once said, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of these facts is that the universe is in us. Now, depending on what you believe, I am definitely one of those that is a firm believer in science, that we are essentially made of stardust, and in which case was actually expounded on by Dr. Carl Sagan as well. Next slide. So, that being said, you often have to wonder, okay, so we have all this information, so what else is out there? In which case, I did kind of bug Professor Lane again, and I asked him, is there possibly a life out there? What do you think is the probability of something being out there? And I think he best stated it as, if the condition for life exists, hence us, or we could just be somebody's fantasy, I guess, there should be no reason why there isn't more out there. That's up to you guys to decide. I'm one of those kids that have watched X-Files most of my life, so it's kind of, I think the truth is out there, put it that way. So, so what I talked to you guys a little bit about today is kind of the background of how we actually figure out what is actually out there by the use of mathematics, technology, and essentially just looking and wondering and trying to figure out where we fit in all this. We actually figure out where everything is. To which I honestly say, stay curious, my friends. Thank you.